Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Fought for Sakura's Love, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. He felt cold and numb, yet if he opened his eyes the world was bathed in late afternoon light, birds and other forms of wildlife going about as if it was a perfect day. He closed his eyes as his chest felt heavy. He wasn't able to move. That's what made him stay awake. He couldn't move except for the shaky rise and fall of his chest. His senses were shot. His mouth tasted of something irony and metallic. Every twitter of a bird overhead seemed like it was miles away. His eyes were clouded slightly. His body was numb, refusing any command he asked of them. The only thing working was his sense of chakra. And a chakra he wanted to K so badly was heading for him. But there was new anger towards the man walking towards him, gently pushing up his glasses, his forehead protector having changed from a leaf to a solitary musical note. He had always hated this man since he found out what he truly was. A traitor, a monster who enjoyed experimenting on those that he deemed weak. But something else was stirring the QB in his cage, begging to be released, but even he who wanted nothing more to wrest this man limb from limb, couldn't even summon up the strength to speak. He couldn't even remember what the reason was for wanting to hate this man far more than he already did. The man suddenly jumped to one side as a pink and red blur charged at him, a gloved fist connecting with the ground, shattering it in all directions. A man clad in blue and black, his face half covered, landed next to him as the pink and red blur focused into a pink-haired girl with blazing green eyes that were trained on him and him alone. They were both talking, but it was mere mumbling to him. The girl knelt down to the other side of him, slipping her delicate hand from a black leather glove. Her hand was shaking slightly and he couldn't place why. Her hand was suddenly engulfed in green and she pressed it to his forehead. His hearing came back with force, causing him to reel away from the tree he had been leaning against. But her arms were waiting there, stopping him from falling to ground. The masked man had disappeared somewhere during those few seconds. Naruto, you barker, she spoke softly as she gently shifted him back against the tree. She placed her green shrouded hand at the center of his chest and he gasped at the contact. Hold still. Kabuto's gone for now. Just let me heal you so I can take you back. Something changed around them, but he couldn't place what. Yet, he opened his mouth and spoke. Sakura-chan, you need to get out of here. Sakura looked at him as he spoke. What do you mean? I can't leave you here. She snapped, her already glistening eyes starting to tear up. I need you, she whispered. Kakashi reappeared. We have a problem, he stated simply. He never said what, but he seemed to already know what his sensei was speaking of. Take her and go, Kakashi-sensei. I'll hold him off, he mumbled, lifting his hand, shaking with the effort. He gently grabbed Sakura's hand and she looked at him, tears threatening to spill down her cheeks. Go now, Sakura-chan. I'll hold him off. She shook her head. No, I can't leave you. I'll be alone again. And a solitary tear made its way down her cheeks. He smirked slightly. Just wait for the rain, Sakura-chan. I'll be in the rain. Now go, she shook her head as Kakashi wrapped an arm around her waist. He gave Naruto a sad look, filled with more pain than most could imagine. Sakura started struggling to get free as Kakashi took to the trees. Let me go. Let me go. I can't leave him. Naruto, don't leave me. He smiled as he slipped several exploding notes from his pocket. His hands were shaking to the point he almost dropped them. He glanced behind him as her screams were growing fainter. I'll see you in the rain, Sakura-chan. Naruto. Naruto bolted up from the couch, looking around him. His chest was rising and falling in a fast rhythm as he tried to catch his breath. He moved his feet to the floor and rested his head in his hands. What the hell was that? He muttered as his breathing slowed. Naruto took a shaky breath as he closed his eyes. They snapped back open as the key points of the dream danced behind his eyelids. His breathing calmed slowly and he looked up at the window across from him. It was late afternoon and Sakura had been assigned to work at the hospital all day, so he had the day to himself. He was still waiting for those test results Tsunade said she would have in a few days. It had been nearly 4 and he hadn't even been summoned to her office to talk. He sighed. He hadn't had much contact with anyone. Sasuke was still confined to the hospital. Sakura was avoiding him for some reason, blushing every time she made eye contact with him. The rest of the Rookie 9 were on missions or were unable to do anything. Naruto didn't feel like doing much anyway. He had done some training from early this morning till early afternoon, caught a late lunch at Ichiraku's and came home to pass out on the couch for a long nap after taking a hot shower. He sighed and stood up slowly. He was bored beyond reason. Before he could take a step, Naruto fell back onto the couch, his vision swimming in front of him. His head suddenly felt 10 times heavier than before and everything blurred further. He shook his head slightly to clear his vision and was met with a sickening pain just behind his eyes. He winced as he stood up again. He managed to stumble into the bathroom, nearly cracking his head open on the counter, as he gripped it for support. He looked at the mirror only to see his image blurred and smudged, colors blending into one another. What the hell is wrong with me? He muttered, straightening up. He closed his eyes trying to stop the dizziness, but it only made him want to throw up. He opened his eyes again and took a deep breath, trying to calm his raging mind and stomach. He let go of the counter and stumbled out or fell into the wall next to his shower. He sat there, his mind whirring. He closed his eyes again. When he opened them, his vision was slightly clearer, but he felt sick. Well beyond sick. His stomach was churning and his tea suddenly felt coarse and dry. He suddenly felt cold, despite the warm atmosphere around him, goosebumps traveling up his bare arms. Warm atmosphere. Naruto looked around and realized that he was not sitting on his bathroom floor but on the chamber floor of his tenant's room. He looked up slightly and felt a wave of nausea pass over him. Kit. Naruto would have looked up at the fox as his voice was soft compared to his usual tone, if his head hadn't vibrated with the voice echoing inside his it. Not so loud, fox. Naruto snapped, his vision blurring again. My head's king me. Naruto looked up at the Kyuubi, shaking his head again, trying to focus the image around him. Kit. I figured out what's wrong with you. Naruto looked up, his vision still foggy. He could just barely make out a glint of what looked like worry in the Kyuubi's eyes. Fox, I think I'm hallucinating, you look worried, Naruto mumbled, shaking his head again. That's because I am, Naruto. This can't be right, Tsunade mumbled to herself. She was trying to remain calm. Shizune was looking stricken as she stood before the Hokage's desk. Her eyes were gleaming and she was silently shaking. Shizune. Why yes, Hokage-sama? She asked shakily. Sit down before you faint, please, Tsunade said soothingly, her eyes adverting from her assistant back to the folder lying on her desk. Shizune merely nodded before sitting down on the couch just to the right of the desk. I don't understand. It took 2 months for us to find this. This shouldn't be possible. She closed her eyes and thought. She went through everything. Everything from that day on. Tsunade opened her eyes, but she couldn't bring herself to look any farther down the report past the name. A spot of moisture suddenly landed next to the name. Shizune looked up as the Hokage sat back in her chair, her fingers gingerly touching her cheek. Tsunade pulled her hand from her cheek to find her fingertips de-sping with tears. She looked out the window, willing the tears to stop. She watched the sun hit the Hokage stone carvings, and the wind brush past the trees. Some time later she would wonder how her tears stopped, but she turned to look at her assistant, who was wiping her eyes tentatively, and felt worse. If that was even possible. She looked back at the medical report, her eyes scanning over it again. Case number 63979. Name: Uzumaki Naruto. Age: 17. Rank: Junin. Reason for visit: medical checkup following collapse of unknown origin. Naruto. You never call me Naruto, fox, Naruto chided, looking at the fox with a slight smirk despite the pain in his head. The fox sighed and Naruto's eyes widened slightly. Kyuubi, what's wrong with me that has you so worried? Kit, the poison is eating your chakra and slowly dissolving your chakra coils. I've never seen something work like this, Kyuubi remarked, tearing his eyes away from the blonde. I can't heal it. Diagnosis: the poison coursing through Uzumaki Naruto's system is something of which we have never seen. It is slowly eating away at his chakra coils and chakra supply. We believe that the poison was laced on the sword of Uchiha Sasuke, whom Uzumaki Naruto had had an encounter with 2 months beforehand, but we remain unsure and unconvinced as we have never seen a poison that takes several weeks to do irreversible damage without some sort of symptom being present. You're joking, right? Naruto's head had suddenly cleared, replaced by a thudding in tune with his heart. The Kyuubi's look said it all, a mixture of anger and sorrow of which Naruto had never seen mixed on the demon's face. He gulped, sitting back slightly. What will happen if I'm not treated? The Kyuubi looked at him with eyes that neither the Kyuubi, nor any demon had ever used. They were so sad. You and I, both. Prognosis: if antivenom is not found within the next 6 months, Uzumaki Naruto will X. It's going to rain, Naruto ni-chan. I can't wait, she exclaimed, running out from under the overhang of the front porch and looking up at the sky, her eyes closed in anticipation. What makes you think the rain is so cool? Her gray eyes, the color of the darkening sky above them, looked into his sky blue eyes as the first raindrop hit her cheek, sliding down her ivory skin, almost as if it were an actual tear. Because the rain takes the pain away. Naruto slowly opened his eyes, burning white engulfing his vision. He blinked, scrunching his eyes up, willing the whiteness to dissipate. He could hear the scratching of a pen to paper, working busily yet forced in some way. Naruto turned his head to the side, his vision slowly returning as colors blurred together and soon formed actual shapes. A green and blonde figure was next to his bed, what appeared to be a blurred peach-colored hand moving back and forth across something. Naruto blinked again, scrunching his eyes closed and then opening them slowly, allowing for the figure to slowly focus. The process took several minutes until he could see 2 mahogany brown eyes, framed by straw blonde hair, flitting over a clipboard while a hand swept across it in one graceful motion. Naruto opened his mouth, surprised at how much energy it was taking him to utter such a small sentence. Ba-chan, to say she was surprised at his husky whisper would almost be considered an understatement, as soon as it had bolted from her chair, the paperwork she had been diligently finishing crashing to the floor, her chair accompanying the papers. Her eyes widened as she saw Naruto's slightly cloudy eyes open and watching her lazily. Oh, Kami-sama. Tsunade took a deep breath and closed her eyes, relaxing her suddenly tense muscles. She opened them again, causing Naruto to gulp as pent-up rage erupted in her eyes, a volcano of misery and violence, all of it focused on him. Damn it, Naruto. You're such an idiot. Naruto winced as she yelled. Why the hell do you go off and do it all alone? Why don't you ask for help? Why the hell does everything bad happen to you? She sunk onto his bed, her back turned to him, as her shoulders gently shook. Naruto slowly sat up, wincing as his back bent and straightened. He slowly reached out, noticing how much energy was wasted on such a simple task. He felt tired, yet he had been fast asleep. He knew that much. His hand gently latched onto Tsunade's shoulder. Ba-chan, stop crying. He winced at his voice. The gargled tone made him sound harsh and cold to his own ears. He cleared his teeth slightly. Please don't cry for me. Please, just don't. It's not worth it. Tsunade slowly turned around to see Naruto's head tilted down, his eyes immersed in the shadow cast by his golden hair. She wiped her eyes and slowly wrapped her arms around him, pulling him close to her. Don't say that, Naruto. Don't you ever think that, Tsunade chided, all the while furiously rubbing her tears away with one hand while the other kept Naruto tightly in her grasp. It's insane not to. Naruto sighed and pressed his head into her shoulder. His headache had come back at full force. Sorry, Ba-chan, he mumbled. They sat like that for several moments before the door suddenly opened. Tsunade was already on the floor picking up her paperwork and Naruto was sitting up looking slightly dazed. Shizune stood in the door slightly out of breath. Naruto-kun, she chirped and ran over, sliding to a stop at his bed and smiling at him. I'm so glad you're awake. Naruto looked at her, smiling softly. Yeah, me too, Shizune ni-chan. I mean, when Kashi-kun brought you in and said he had found you unconscious on the floor of your bathroom and you had such a high fever, Naruto-kun. I'm just so glad. Shizune rambled for a few seconds before noticing 2 pairs of glimmering eyes on her. What? You said, Kashi-kun, Shizune. Something I should know about? Tsunade asked, raising an eyebrow, the newly organized paperwork resting on her hip. No. What? I have to go. Do some paperwork. Bye. Shizune sprinted out of the room, her face a deep tomato red. Naruto and Tsunade chuckled softly at her embarrassment. You know I never would have put those two together, Tsunade mused. Yeah, I know. Naruto cut himself off as pain tore through his forehead. He clenched his eyes shut and rubbed the palm of his hand against his temple, the pain moving to right behind his eyes. Naruto. Tsunade stepped over and pressed her hand to Naruto's forehead. Her lips lengthened into a thin line of worry. You have a fever. Lie down. It wasn't a request as she gently pushed Naruto back onto the pillow, her hand still on his forehead but now shrouded in green chakra. Naruto involuntarily sighed as the cooling sensation of chakra numbed the pain. Ba-chan, how long do I have to stay here? Naruto asked softly. It appeared to be an innocent question coming from an oblivious shinobi, but Naruto's hand came up and moved Tsunade's hand away from his forehead so he could see her properly. Amber met Cerulean and Tsunade understood. Kyuubi figured it out, she mumbled softly, her hand still hovering in Naruto's grasp, the green chakra still swimming around it. It was a statement but Naruto nodded his head as if she had asked for confirmation. Then, I don't know, it was a barely audible whisper. Naruto sighed and closed his eyes again. What do we do, Ba-chan? He released her arm which fell to her side, swiftly a slight swish accompanying it. Whatever we can, Gaki. Don't think I'm going to let you go so easily, Naruto smiled through the headache. If you say so, he chuckled, regretting his joke as he hissed in pain. But could you give me something for this headache, Ba-chan? Naruto missed the sad smile that passed over Tsunade's face as she spoke. Yeah, I'll get you a prescription for some pain meds, she said trying to feign happiness. Naruto cracked an eye open. You'll figure something out, Ba-chan. I know you will, he said softly, giving her the warm smile he always gave to anyone. Too bad it was a fake smile. Tsunade would have hit him for smiling like that. It hurt her so much to see it on his face. But he was in bad enough shape as it was her motherly instincts that kicked in. Just sleep, Naruto. You'll feel better when you wake up, she murmured, pulling the hospital sheets around his hospital-gowned body. Sure thing, Ba-chan, Naruto murmured as he was already halfway gone into his dreams. Tsunade turned and left the room. She closed the door behind her and leaned against it, her head bent down, a few strands of straw blonde hair falling into her face. Why does everything bad happen to him? Why is it always him? Ino's day was going as perfect as any day could. She had woken up early, gotten a nice workout, spent some time with her team and had a nice early afternoon outing with a few of her girlfriends, namely Tenten and Hinata. She was now walking through the green-white hallways of the hospital, on her way to check on a few patients. Hinata was on desk duty, with Tenten and her chatting away without much interruption. Ino came up to the last door in the corridor, her final stop before she could take a break and go back to her chatting with Hinata and Tenten. She knocked lightly on the door before slowly opening it, looking around the room. She shrugged and walked to the small bed, looking for the chart. She found it lying haphazardly on an armchair next to the bed. That's odd, she murmured, picking up the chart and flipping the top sheet over so she could see exactly what she needed to check. Uzumaki Naruto, admitted after being found unconscious and high fever, Ino mumbled, her eyes widening as she read further down the report. Poison eating away chakra coils, no cure has been found, 6 months, what the hell? She whipped around to look at the bed's occupant, her eyes wide in confusion. She examined the figure from a distance. He had blonde fur-like hair, 3 whisker marks on each cheek and the sheet which had migrated down to the middle of his chest revealed the Hokage's en lace. Same hair. Same face, oh my god. It's Naruto. The report slipped from her fingers. Okami-sama, what happened to you, Naruto? Ino couldn't move. She just stood there, watching all the monitors. They were all normal and yet the report. It could be lying right. Ino was suddenly moving, her legs pounding against the tiles, dodging nurses and patients as she came to them. She finally skidded to a halt in front of the reception desk where Tenten and Hinata were laughing softly. They looked up and both were next to Ino in a second. Ino, what's wrong? Tenten asked, helping Ino into a chair, with Hinata following closely behind her. Ino was shaking, her eyes wide and watering. It was like she had seen the end of the world glaring back at her. Ino, Kami-sama, what's wrong? Did something happen? What's this, Ino? Hinata had noticed the report, which Ino didn't remember picking up as she ran from the room. Hinata opened it and read the contents. Her eyes widened and she looked from the report to Ino, the report and back again. No. Ino rested her head in her hands and nodded, confirming that she didn't believe it either. Tenten, becoming increasingly curious at her friend's stunned and sorrow-filled expressions, stood up and looked at the report. She managed to grab it before it slipped from Hinata's grasp. She read it for several seconds before looking at the two medic nin who were sitting side by side, looking utterly surprised. This has to be wrong, a mistake, right? Tenten asked, begging for the assurance it was simply a late April Fool's joke. Ino shook her head, her arms still wrapped around her head. No, she choked. He's up there. Oh, Kami-sama, what do we do? You keep it to yourselves. They all jumped and turned to see the Hokage and her assistant standing dejectedly in the reception area. You have to go about as if nothing is wrong, at least until I can figure out how to help him. All three girls nodded, quickly wiping the tears from their eyes even though they didn't remember them slipping from their eyes. Tenten handed Tsunade the report and her and Shizune left without another word. It was an understanding in the shinobi world. Death was a part of everyday life. You had to accept it, but this, the silence and wallowing in their sadness. This secret they had to carry was for Sakura. If she found out, it was hard to tell what might happen. It was hard enough the first time. Orochimaru-sama, can you hear me? A man stood in the shadows of his hospital room, a long-distance radio pressed to his ear as he looked out at the village of Konoha. What is it, Kabuto? You haven't been found out that quickly, have you? A hiss was sent through the long-distance radio. Of course not, Orochimaru-sama. My disguise is perfect. I am merely reporting in that the plan to kill Naruto-kun has taken effect and moving along nicely. Orochimaru smiled, his unnaturally long tongue licking his lips in anticipation as she gazed from the shadows into a pillar of white and gold light. That is good news, Kabuto. Kukaku. Excellent news. His smile grew into a monstrous smile. Yes, Orochimaru-sama. Your plans are working perfectly. A thought seemed to occur to Kabuto as he spoke. Speaking of which, how is the prisoner? Orochimaru stood and walked towards the pillar of light, his smile if even possible growing more sinister. Among the pillar of light was the shadow of a cross. Yes. How are you doing, Sasuke-kun? A slight shift in the light revealed a body of a late teenager tied to the cross, his head of raven black hair raised, allowing his red with black Toma eyes to glare at the snake Sannin. He spat at him. Orochimaru wiped the spit from his chalk-white face. He is feisty today, Kabuto. Orochimaru delivered a swift kick to Sasuke's gut. Keep up the good work, Kabuto. I expect another report in a few days. Orochimaru punched the Uchiha in the gut, earning a silent gasp of pain followed by several coughs. As always, Orochimaru-sama, the line went S. Orochimaru smiled again, taking a step away from his prisoner. It seems, Sasuke-kun, that your precious friend is S. Perfectly in tone to my plan. Kukaku. You will become mine, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke's head slumped as mad laughter rained through the small chamber. Orochimaru exited the room, the door clinking closed. Sasuke slowly slipped away from the real world, the only thought on his mind plaguing him into a restless sleep. For Kami-sama's sake, Naruto, don't s.x. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.